This is the M1 Max MacBook Pro, and Pro is back. Apple did something that would cost them a lot of users in 2016. Reviewers have since complained about keyboards, touch bars, overheating and ports, so when Apple announced the new Macs, most of us professionals could not wait to get the new Macs in our hands. This is a 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Max 32-core GPU, 10-core CPU and a 512GB SSD. At first glance, this laptop looks thick, but in reality, it's just an optical illusion. If you compare it to my old late 2013 MacBook Pro, we see that the 16-inch is barely thicker than the old one. The 13-inch is designed to look thin. But yes, the 16-inch is slightly thicker than the previous 16-inch model, but I like the new, more boxy design language. It gives more room for thermals and batteries. So other than a mostly perceived thickness difference, what else? We have ports back. Let's start on the left side. Here we have two Thunderbolt 4 ports, a MagSafe 3 connector. We also have a headphone jack that can power high impedance headphones. And according to reviewers who have tested high impedance headphones like SNES Labs, it can definitely drive them even though the amp isn't that good. Over on the other side, we have a third Thunderbolt 4 port, an SDXC card slot and an HDMI 2.0. So yes, we only have 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports on these Macs, but I don't have a problem with that. Because if there only were 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports, one of them would have been taken up by a dock, a second one would have been taken up by a charging cable when doing intense tasks like video editing, meaning I would probably only have 2 ports left. But with this arrangement of ports, I can transfer footage to an external drive straight from the SD card and charge my Mac while doing the transfer and still have 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports left. As for the HDMI 2.0 port, I couldn't care less for 4K at 120Hz. You are probably using the HDMI connector to connect a projector, and if the higher refresh rate is so important, you still have 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports to use. Inside the laptop, we found a keyboard that is way better than the Butterfly keyboard, but I still prefer the keyboard on my old 13-inch MacBook Pro, because it has slightly more travel and tactic feel. That being said, I really like the black anodized back of the keyboard. Something that might stand out is the lack of a touch bar. I personally have never owned a Mac with a touch bar, but have used it a few times, and the only thing I really would miss is to skip through ads on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube and watching videos, that is an excellent experience with a new mini LED display. Dolby Vision looks outstanding and I could never use any other screen other than the Pro Display XDR or an OLED screen. It also has ProMotion, which gives the display an adaptive refresh rate between 120 and 24 Hz. The only thing that bugs me is that the screen isn't tilting back far enough. My old 13-inch MacBook Pro opens slightly more and it would be perfect. The sound is incredible for a laptop. The bass is surprisingly full and plays dynamic songs with ease, meaning it handles music that goes from loud to quiet really well. But the spatial audio could be a disappointment if you expected surround sound. When watching Ted Lasso, I could hear sound seemingly coming from straight left and straight right in some cases. The best way to describe it is extended stereo. The Mac somehow managed to get the sound to sound like they were coming from the side of the Mac. It's a weird experience and hard to understand, but I think this is something you have to experience in person to really understand. But all in all, this is a top-notch experience. Yes, there is a notch, but I haven't noticed it at all. And no, there is no Face ID sensors in the notch. I would guess that would come in the next upgrade for this Mac. The extra 2 inches you can get with these Macs is due to the extended screen on the side of the notch. But the notch still has some weird quirks, like why isn't the top bar flush with the notch? And the behavior differs based on the length of the menu. In apps with short enough menu bars, the cursors could disappear behind the notch. But if the menu is too long and extends to the other side of the notch, the cursor just jumps. And why does the top menu show when watching a full screen video when you have enabled top menu to always show? And to be honest, the temporary fix Apple implemented until developers fix the top menu in their apps is just a joke. Just look at it. Couldn't you just black out the notch part and leave the bezels alone? Thankfully, Apple added a 1080p webcam in the notch. And with the computational processing, it looks good if you just ignore what seems like skin smoothing. The studio quality microphone sounds like a decent USB microphone, and that makes video calling a lot better. And that is something you can do for a long time with the battery life on this Mac. That being said, I have the most power hungry M1 Max, but still averaged around 7 to 8 hours under typical use. That includes a lot of video watching, web browsing and word processing. I managed to squeeze almost 10 hours out of this Mac with low power mode. And the high power mode didn't increase the performance to the point where it was noticeable. So I generally left the Mac on automatic mode. But when it was time to charge, it charged fast. With MagSafe, you can quick charge the 16-inch from 0 to 50% in 30 minutes. but are limited to 100 watts when charging with USB-C. With fast charging, there might be some concerns about battery health. Luckily, Apple announced their self-repair service that allows you to replace the batteries when they need to be replaced. And the batteries seem easy to remove as well. And can we appreciate the braided MagSafe cable? But the only thing that bugs me is that the MagSafe cable is silver with the space gray version. And the performance is astonishing. And to be honest, this Mac is overkill for me at the moment. It's blazing through all that I have thrown at it. I got really impressed with rendering times when I threw a 4K H.265 file from my phone and just replaced the audio with a music track. The final render was 56 seconds long and got it rendered in 8 seconds. My YouTube videos have rendered about 4 times real-time speed, compared to about 2 hours for the same video on the 13-inch MacBook Pro. It seems like Apple stuffed a Mac Pro and a Pro Display XDR inside this laptop. So unless you use heavy noise reduction or the Magic Mask in DaVinci Resolve, it should play back flawlessly. Since I work with video, that's the only thing that I've tested, but from what I've seen, compiling code and 3D rendering should also be a breeze with this computer. The best part of all is that I can't remember that I have heard the fan kick on. It has gotten warm after a long session with video editing and rendering. Other than that, it has barely become warm. So who is this Mac for? The easiest way to tell is to take a look at how Apple advertised these Macs. And the M1 Max and Pro for that matter are not marketed towards the average Joe. The M1 Max is aimed at real professionals who need and can utilize the performance and need or want the portability in one computer. So you probably don't need the M1 Max unless you have money to burn. Overall, I'm impressed by the performance and battery life and can wholeheartedly recommend this to those who can utilize this amount of power. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing for more tech related content.